Thursday, the 24th of February 2022 is a day that will live in infamy. In the early hours of the morning, Russian forces began a large-scale assault on the sovereign nation of Ukraine, involving invasion by land, sea and air. Russia mounted this invasion from multiple fronts, including Ukraine's northern border with Belarus. Russia, a country of 7 million square kilometres, and with the added utilisation of Belarus's territory, tried to suddenly overwhelm its neighbour of 604,000 square kilometres in the middle of the night. The evening prior, the Dáil had heard statements on the security situation in Europe. The solidarity with Ukraine expressed in the presence of the Ukrainian ambassador to Ireland was widespread and sincere across this House. The message from this House was unwavering. Ireland supports Ukraine. That evening, not even a week ago, we were clear in our condemnation of President Putin's decision to recognise the non-government controlled areas of the Ukrainian oblasts of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent entities. And we were, of course, deeply concerned by Russia's military build-up and aggressive stance towards the people of Ukraine. That was only 6 days ago. And less than a week later, we gather again, united in horror at the outrageous and naked aggression which we've seen from Russia against its neighbour. Through its decision to launch an invasion, violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, the Russian Federation has brought war again to European soil. It has flagrantly violated the UN Charter and the core principles of international law. Its actions have horrified and disgusted the world. Ceann Comhairle, I've been asked questions in recent days about Ireland's military neutrality. We hear some of them again today. And the impact on our neutrality of some of our responses to the Ukraine crisis. Ireland is militarily neutral. That is, we are not a member of a military alliance. But let me say clearly that we are not and never will be politically neutral in the face of the bombardment of cities, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, attempts to lay siege to a city of 3 million men, women and children, people who have never asked for war and who wish only to live in a democratic, peaceful, stable and free country and make their own sovereign decisions about their foreign and security policy. Like all of us in this House, I've been deeply impressed by the resolve shown by the Ukrainian people and government. As we speak, the capital Kiev, the second largest city, Kharkiv, remain in Ukrainian hands, despite intensive attacks against both cities. The dignity and heroism of so many ordinary Ukrainians has been simply extraordinary. The leadership shown by President Zelensky and Foreign Minister Kuleba have been exemplary. In response to Ukraine's application for EU membership, can I say that Ireland is a strong supporter of Ukraine's European aspirations and making that happen as soon as possible. Ukraine has shown extraordinary determination to uphold the values of the EU, and that is something that we have seen a heroic effort over the last number of days, not only to defend Ukraine, but a value system and a way of life that they want to pursue. Ukrainians, by the thousands, are willing to lay down their lives to protect that dream. Ceann Comhairle, I devoted some of my time in my statements on Wednesday to the EU response. Let me say that in my 24 years in politics or so, I have never seen EU member states as unified and with as much resolve as I've seen on this issue. In the space of 5 days, we have imposed 3 packages of unprecedented sanctions against Russia, hit the web of companies, financial institutions, state institutions and agencies, oligarchs, government members and media interests that surround President Putin and enable the corruption and violence that we have seen on such naked display in the last week. These actions include the closure of EU airspace to all Russian aircraft, freezing the assets of the Russian Central Bank in the EU, expelling key Russian banks from SWIFT, sanctioning over 500 individual oligarchs, government ministers, senior army and security officials and heads of state institutions, extending sanctions on Belarus for its role in allowing its territory to be used for Russian aggression, and sanctioning key figures on Russian media outlets which are disseminating disinformation across the EU. EU leaders said in December that further military aggression by Russia against Ukraine would result in massive cost for Russia, and this is exactly what's happening. Ireland will continue to play our part in these collective efforts. We have been at the fore of EU efforts and indeed sometimes ahead, taking a decision in principle to ban Russian aircraft from our airspace in advance of the collective EU agreement to do so, and calling early for an exclusion of key Russian financial institutions and banks from the SWIFT system. Each package of sanctions has been designated to add an additional layer of pressure on the Russian and Belarusian governments and to cripple their ability to finance their illegal and unconscionable actions. Ireland will support any further proposals that we believe will be effective in stymieing Russia's war efforts. The news coming out of Russia since Thursday shows that these wide-ranging sanctions are having an undeniable impact. The value of the ruble has crashed. This will impact Russia's continued ability to conduct this war. The effects of asset freezes and travel bans will be felt immediately by individuals who have been sanctioned, including those close to President Putin, who influence his decisions and provide him with support. Sanctions are not cost-free for Ireland and for other countries joining this unprecedented global effort. We are in ongoing contact with Irish companies to support them in mitigating some of the impacts on them, and we'll continue to work at government level to ensure we are ready for any countermeasures that Russia might impose on the EU, and we can expect that potentially to be quite severe. But of course, no one is being hurt as much as innocent Ukrainian citizens, fleeing for refuge, whose cities are under siege and whose civilian infrastructure is being targeted. I welcome the statement of the International Criminal Court prosecutor, Karim Khan, that he will open an investigation into the situation in Ukraine. He stated unambiguously last night that there is a reasonable basis now to believe that both alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed in Ukraine. Ireland, as always, will stand firmly and unambiguously behind the International Criminal Court and defend its independence and impartiality. Alarmingly, we've also seen reports of the use of cluster munitions or cluster bombs in an urban residential area in Ukraine's second largest city, which Ireland strongly condemns. The use of indiscriminate and disproportionate weapons cannot be tolerated, and it is a clear violation of international humanitarian law. We must do everything that we can to reach and to support Ukrainian people. My department announced late last week a fresh €10 million in humanitarian funding for Ukraine. Minister McEntee has confirmed that we have suspended all visa requirements for Ukrainian citizens seeking to enter Ireland for their first 90 days. 2 days ago, along with my EU colleagues, we agreed a package of €500 million in military assistance for the Ukrainian military through the European Peace Facility so that people can defend themselves. In line with the commitment in the programme for government, Ireland will pay our share in full to those efforts. Our proportion, likely to be approximately €10 million or so, will be used exclusively for the provision of non-lethal support. The latter component will include supplies such as personal protective equipment, medical kits and fuel, all urgently needed and being asked for by Ukrainians. 2 fellow EU member states, Austria and Malta, have also taken a similar approach. Ireland has also led the response at UN level, after Russia vetoed a Security Council resolution last Friday condemning the offensive against Ukraine, calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities and urgent dialogue. Ireland moved quickly to ensure that an urgent session of the General Assembly was convened. The Russian Federation's use of the veto at the Security Council was a reprehensible attempt to excuse its own military aggression against another sovereign state. It must not and will not prevent the international community from responding to Russia's blatant breaches of international law, nor will it deter us from holding Russia accountable for its actions. We hope and expect that a majority of the members of the UN General Assembly will support a clear and robust resolution to condemn this outright violation of the UN Charter. We will bring this issue back to the Security Council chamber and are pushing today for the adoption of a resolution calling for safe and unhindered humanitarian access to all in need in Ukraine. Ceann Comhairle, I won't go into the details here on the consular issues in which my department continues to lead. I will just say that my officials are in ongoing contact with Irish citizens remaining in Ukraine. The number fluctuates daily, but today stands at just under 80 people. We're also in contact with families in surrogacy arrangements in Ukraine. And you will understand that I do not want to make any comment on that publicly, given the extremely sensitive situation that applies to a number of families, some here and some in Poland, waiting for news of their newborn children. I want to make it clear that our strong advice is against all travel to Ukraine for any reason. I understand the strength of feeling amongst Ukrainian and Irish citizens alike that some have been in contact with my department, looking for information on how to join military efforts to defend Ukraine. I must make clear again, the situation in Ukraine is extremely volatile and extremely dangerous, and Irish citizens and residents should not travel under any circumstances. Ceann Comhairle, this motion which I am laying before the House articulates the support from every political party and every deputy here for Ukraine. Last week, Leinster House, along with many other civic buildings in Ireland, lit up in the colours of the Ukrainian flag, blue and yellow, to show solidarity. It's now time for us in the Dáil to formally record solidarity with Ukraine by agreeing this motion. In the course of our debates on the security situation in Europe, there have been some differences, of course, of emphasis, some differences of views expressed on international matters, as is normal in any healthy democracy. There has, though, as a fundamental principle, been widespread support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and I know that we can reiterate that collectively today. The text of this motion is straightforward in its support for Ukraine, and I urge all deputies to support this motion. The 24th of February 2022 was a dark day for Ukraine, for Russia, for Belarus, and for the whole world. President Putin's announcement represents a dangerous and irresponsible escalation in tensions and considerably heightens the risk of catastrophic miscalculation. There can be no justification for threatening use of nuclear weapons. I've called for Russia to immediately revoke the order to place nuclear weapons on high alert status, and I urge maximum restraint and de-escalation. As I close, I want to speak directly to any of the Russian people in Ireland or indeed elsewhere who are watching or listening to this debate. We know that many Russian people do not want this war. Many have been deeply courageous in protesting against military aggression. We know that the people of Belarus are not represented by the aggressive actions of the Belarusian government either. There is still time. Enormous damage and destruction has been done. The loss of human life, which is mounting as we speak, is beyond shocking. UNHCR estimates that 500,000 Ukrainians have already fled into neighbouring countries, 4 European countries in particular. But there is still time to pull back and to choose a path of reason, restraint and diplomacy. In this motion, the Dáil calls on Russia to withdraw its military immediately. This can be done at any moment. What has happened will not be forgotten, but we can still work towards peace and resolution, and that is something that I think should be an aspiration for everybody in this House to support.